Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at one of a couple of stakes races on Saturday at Keeneland. Race 10 is the Grade 3 Ben Ally going the mile and 3/16 distance on the dirt for older horses. Before we get to the handicapping of that race, though, you do want to note we're just over 2 weeks away from the Kentucky Derby, so time to start planning how you're going to do your handicapping. And we do have some Kentucky Derby packages available at DRF.com. If you're going to be buying Oaks and Derby, just bundle them in one of these packages and you can get betting strategies, the player's guide, and clock reports. Save up to 39% getting it all together in one of our Kentucky Derby packages. Find out more at shop.drf.com. Well, Mike, back over to this Ben Ally. It drew a field of 7 runners, and I wonder if you went through a similar thought process to me when you saw this field, because I initially just kind of scanned down the field before I started my handicapping and thought, well, this is kind of a disappointing race for a Grade 3 event. But then I started to do a deeper dive looking into each of these runners, and it's actually kind of an interesting race to handicap and one that I'm looking forward to betting.
Yeah, I had the same experience. I mean, when you look at the name, especially when before I even looked at the PPs, just looking at the names, I was like, what kind of field is this for a Keeneland graded stakes race? But there are some really interesting horses in here. I guess, if you wanted to say Duke of Love has a couple of dirt races that are going to make them really tough in here, I'll agree. But that doesn't mean that I want to take him as the favorite against this field.
Yeah, I don't envy Nick trying to make a morning line for this kind of race because they're all coming in from different directions. And I guess Duke of Love has back races to maybe go favorite in here, but he's a horse that's run one time in the past year and a half. So not the easiest one to trust. We'll see how they bet him and the others in here. Let's see how these horses could sort themselves out heading into that clubhouse turn, though, by looking at the Timeform US pace projector. And Mike, this could be key to how this race unfolds because there's not a ton of speed in here. And yes, horses like Tennessee Lamb and San Siro and even Duke of Love had a little bit of tactical speed, but it does kind of feel like the number 2, Prince of Power, will have an opportunity to be out in front, wigging on the front end, because that is his style. He just has way more early speed than the others in this field, and we'll see if he can take them the distance.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he was making the lead in this race. Whether that, makes him good enough, I guess remains to be seen, but he'll be a price. And I do think he's going to be on the lead. My take on the pace, David, and you can tell me whether you agree or disagree. My take is, aside from the 2, I think the 5 is going forward in this race. This horse has plenty of speed when they decide to use it. When he gets good trips, and especially when he runs his best races, it's when they go forward with this horse. His form looks a little spotty. We'll talk about it more when we get to him, but this horse has had some real trips in his races.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be going that quickly up front, as that favors frontrunner's flag would indicate. So I think there will be opportunity for some riders, potentially for Laurent Giroux on Paroli, to get a little bit more aggressive with their horses and attain some forward position. Let's go through this field, beginning from the rail out with the number 1, San Siro. And Mike, this is a relatively lightly raced 4-year-old, only making the 11th start of his career now in Grade 3 company. And he tried Graded Stakes company for the first time last out in the New Orleans Classic and just ran into a very tough field. I know there were only 4 rivals, but they were 4 rivals that probably each would be favored in this race if they're running against a group like this. So I'm not going to really fault him for finishing far behind the likes of Touch Upon a Star, Hall of Fame, and Sierra Leone. He ran really well at this distance 2 back at the mile and 16th distance 2 back at Fairgrounds, earning a 97 buyer and beating a couple of next out winners.
It felt like a real forward move in that win 2 starts back for this horse. I would also just note that he got an absolute perfect trip in that race, but he did look good winning. It came back fast time. You're right about his most recent race. I mean, he just looked totally overmatched in there, but it was a really good field, and it doesn't feel like this Ben Ally is nearly as tough.
The number 2 is Prince of Power, who was depicted on the front end in that pace projector. And Mike, it does feel like he has plenty of early speed to make the lead here. You go all the way back to that dirt race in December of last year, where he went 44 and change to the half mile in a 1-turn mile event, and actually battled on really gamely to the wire behind Hall of Fame, a horse that was trouncing San Siro in his last race. So that form line is pretty strong for Prince of Power. They went to synthetic after that. I'm not convinced that he really loves synthetic, but he still ran gamely in a couple of those races, 2 and 3 back. And then last time in the Commonwealth, the race was only 11 days ago. To me, he is not a 7-furlong sprinter. He just got run off his feet from the start of that race, but it's not like he ever threw in the towel. He actually was in this massive photo for 4th at the end. He was churning on all the way to the wire, and I think stretching back out in distance is really going to work for him.
I agree. Yeah, it just felt like a fast-paced sprint. Just really works against this horse. So you want to be a little lenient for the Commonwealth. They're back quickly in here. They're stretching him back out into a race that could really play to his strengths because he can get to the front here. And I'm going to agree with your take on the the dirt race in December at Churchill. I mean, that's first of all, it's a good horse that ran him down, and he ran really, really well in there on a solid pace.
The number 3, Tennessee Lamb, is another horse that's moving up into graded stakes company, trying this level for the first time. And Mike, he took a while to break his maiden, actually 8 starts to do so, but he did it convincingly, going a longer distance at Churchill Downs in the slop at the end of last year. And turf experiment didn't work out, but they got back on the dirt last time in a one-turn mile at Gulfstream. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that race, and he wins pretty convincingly. I guess the issue with him is that both of these dirt victories have come against much weaker company than this, but I suppose you could project some upside for him.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, even if you're, going to say he's up in class here, it's not just the strongest race in the world. So maybe he's found the right spot to finally take on graded stakes horses. He looks good winning this race, David. I'm a little conflicted about the performance. Ultimately, I wasn't, totally blown away by it. He had a really fast contested pace in front of him there. He sat off it and he came running.
The number 4, Time for Trouble, is a horse that has tried stakes company and graded stakes company a number of times in his career, going a variety of distances, conventional route distances, all the way out to the extended marathons, 1.75 miles in the Birdstone a couple summers ago at Saratoga. And Mike, he generally runs well. He doesn't win all that often, but he does have a victory at a big price over this Keeneland course. I guess the major question with Time for Trouble is whether or not he's still capable of those big efforts now as an 8-year-old, because his last few efforts have been on the dull side.
Yeah, he didn't seem like he was quite as good even last year, through whatever it was, 5 or 6 starts. And then his last couple of races aren't great either. We'll see if he's still capable. He's obviously just really versatile. He's generally been really reliable. He's got a top race that gives him a real chance in here. He's 4-1 on the morning line. That's kind of uninteresting.
The number 5, Piroli, is a horse that does have a pretty big effort going a distance similar to this, the 1.25 miles, a couple of years ago in the Gold Cup at Santa Anita, where he was chasing home Defunded, who at the time was in very good form for trainer Bob Baffert. Now, Piroli has only achieved 1 victory in 10 starts since then, and his form looks very inconsistent on paper, Mike. But if you kind of pick through it, you can find some positive takeaways with this horse, especially going back to his last couple of dirt races. I'll let you expand on this, but he ran better than it looks a couple of times.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I looked at him too. I mean, obviously, if just on the first glance, it just sort of looks like he's a little in and out, and maybe maybe his good races are just when things go his way, and that certainly could be the truth with this horse. But I just feel like his form is all dirtied up, especially since that Gold Cup that you were talking about, David. Obviously, look, they ran him in 2 more grade 1s at the end of 2023, and it just didn't work out. And it may look like he's just hasn't been good since then. I think he's actually been really good since then. Particularly, he had the win here last year, going 9 furlongs, where that's the race that sort of pointed him out to me, where he's going to be forward in here. They just moved up, sat right in behind the lead the entire way, and he won that race easily once he got through on the inside. The race at Churchill after that, he had an impossible trip. San Siro finished ahead of him. This horse, to me, ran way better than San Siro did in that spot. He's been on synthetic in 2 starts since.
Yeah, and I know he's got that victory on synthetic, but you go back to early in his career when he achieved it, it was only a 71 buyer at Golden Gate. So he might just be a horse that likes the dirt way better than that all-weather surface that he's getting back on the dirt here. The number 6 is Duke of Love. And if you go back to his form from the middle of 2023, he's the horse to beat in this race, winning the West Virginia Governor's Cup and then coming back in the Jockey Club Gold Cup and only losing to horses like Bright Future and Proxy by 3 lengths. They were among the better older dirt horses at that point in time, and he earned a 99 buyer going the 1.25 mile distance. However, he then spent the next year and a half on the sidelines and came back in a 7 furlong allowance race last time at Gulfstream Park, and maybe just needed that race as a tightener. But I don't know exactly what to expect from this horse now, second off such a long layoff.
I don't either. I mean, listen, can he win? Absolutely, he can win here. I don't know that I would want to bet him. I don't know that he'll be as short as the morning line has him, but maybe he will. The positive, I guess, about the most recent start is it seemed like it was clearly a prep for this horse. Going shorter, they just sat 4 wide around the track and sort of let him run through the stretch in the race. Obviously, he needed it. Maybe he moves forward here and he's found the right field, but I wouldn't take a short price on him.
The number 7, Uno Mas Bourbon, is another one of these improving 4-year-olds. He kind of has a similar resume to horses we talked about, like San Siro and Tennessee Lamb, but at least Uno Mas Bourbon has some prior decent form at the graded stakes level when he tried a company like this in the Fayette and the Clark late last year, and he faced stronger fields than he's meeting in this Ben Ally, chasing home the likes of Hit Show and Rattle and Roll. I should mention Dubai World Cup winner Hit Show. And Unamas Bourbon came back off the layoff last time at Gulfstream Park and was staying on at the end. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that race. A 1-turn mile is probably on the short side for a horse that really prefers the 2-turn distances, but the top 2 finishers in this race, Inveigled and Knightsbridge, they both have some talent. And Mike, if he steps forward now, second off the layoff, going back to one of his preferred distances, he's a player here.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see what he can do. I could go either way on this horse, I guess, David. I thought he ran, fine in here, but it's not the kind of performance that would make me want to bet him back in a graded stakes race. Even the Fayette and the Clark, he ran fine in those races against better fields than this, but to me, there was never a point in either one of those where it looks like he was going to, really be competitive. I don't know. I'm not way against him, but I'm certainly way against him at the morning line odds. I would never take him at 7-2.
Yeah, I agree with that. And for me, I was a little bit worried about the pace scenario for him because he doesn't have the most early speed. And I think this is a race where you might not want to be coming from too far back. And so let's take a look at our picks for this Ben Ally, Mike. And I think we both want horses that could be somewhat forwardly placed, because I agree with your take of the number 5 Paroli and his positioning early. There might be an opportunity for him to get a more aggressive ride from Ferrand Giroux.
Yeah, I was hoping that they would go forward in here, maybe fall into the right kind of a trip. I just think he's a horse, David, who's better than he looks on paper, a little bit underrated. And as opposed to some of the other horses in here, I felt like there's a real chance that he does actually get overlooked in here. It doesn't take a ton of money.
And I went with that horse that was really highlighted on the pace projector, the number 2 Prince of Power, as the lone speed in this race. We'll see if it actually plays out that way on the racetrack. Because it's so obvious that he looks like the lone speed, I kind of doubt he's really going to be 15-1. But even for me, 8-1 seems like a fair price on a horse that just seems to have such a pace advantage. And I really do believe that this distance works for him, even though it might not look so obvious based on the form. He's just a horse that has run well in his dirt races. It hasn't really gotten to go this far on the dirt so far. So 2-5-1-7 for me and 5-6-1-4 for Mike in the Grade 3 Ben Ally on Saturday at Keeneland. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.